gamified folklore and science with Scratch. Scratch is a coding language that we teach a lot of elementary and beginner high school students as an easy introduction into the coding world. Everybody that has talked before me has talked about scientific data, this number, that number. That's all awesome. I understand that, but what are my students going to understand? I'm going to be throwing numbers at them. So I took a very different approach. Whatever's happened now has happened before. That was my approach. We see solar weather now. We've seen solar weather before. Except people years ago, hundreds, thousands of years ago, didn't have computers, didn't have stuff. They told folklore. I wanted to teach my students the folklore that came with space weather and solar weather. And that was great, but how do you include computer science into that? Well, I have an awesome team of graduate students making a website for me at Montclair. Great, but that wasn't, okay. Everybody has a website. So now I took it to my students and I had them do a Scratch lesson. So they were taking Scratch, which is the coding language they knew, and they were making folklore come true. When you say solar weather to students, they're like, it's raining out. Okay, great. Okay, no. And so I go, let's study the aurora borealis. And one of my students goes, spell that. And I was like, oh, I'm out. Okay, so it's the Northern Lights. How many of you guys have watched Disney? Any Disney movie? Awesome, you've seen the Northern Lights in the movie. Every Disney movie somehow incorporates the Northern Lights. Not sure how, but they all have them, and if they don't have them, they're on the end scene, the cut scene. Don't believe me? Watch a few. Okay, so the auroras happened in Jersey in September. We were in school. I can go with that learning. You saw this in the time period I'm teaching about. Okay. Science and folklore. I studied science. I was in front of the top scientists. My fellow colleagues are top science teachers, computer science teachers. And then there's me going, but how does this go into fairy tale world? Okay? So in science, the cause of northern lights, or aurora borealis, is solar particles colliding with the atmosphere. Sounds pretty cool to me as a nerd, but my students are like, what? Okay? Well, in folklore, there are spirits, ancestors, and divine warriors. Okay? The interpretation in science is a natural phenomenon. Say that 10 times fast. In folklore, it's a cultural and spiritual meaning. What's the emotional impact? Awe and curiosity of the science world. How does this work? Let me study it. Okay? In folklore, reverence and connection. We are connected to this earth. Okay? And when was it discovered? For scientists, it was discovered in the 17th century. The world apparently started in the 17th century. Okay? For us, in the folklore community, at the beginning of time, we had folklore, and we had solar events happening. They saw these spirits in the sky. There's some songs about it too. Okay. The Northern Lights inspire scientific exploration and artistic expression. They connect us to both natural processes and cultural heritage, and they understand both perspectives and they appreciation. Now, when you think of solar flares, you're like, oh no, there's a flare. But when you think of aurora borealis, you're like, this is beautiful. Except if you see red. Just saying. You never think of red as a northern lights color, and that is good. Okay, if you saw my friend earlier present, he talked about Julius Caesar, and I will bring up Julius Caesar. They saw a red aurora borealis
from your students, what do you think from your perspective was the most interesting project that you saw in that regard?
They all looked pretty similar, but the students were in awe and wanted to go further with the research of the pictures of, like I gave them 3 stock photos so that they would just see what it looked like, and other students really went into it and changed the background, they changed the characters, and they were able to get more learning into it.
And then, so the students that they had to go both routes. Did the spiritual side of it have more folklore detail, and the scientific side more? Okay.
Yep.
That's cool.
They cared more about the folklore because they could connect with it.
Right.
What I didn't say is I have a large Spanish population and a minute Bengali population. That's most of my class. So it was funny when I was saying the Native Americans, every once in a while I would slip unattendedly. I'm like, the Indian tradition. I'm like, hold on, Native Americans. And they're like, oh. Well, in our country, I was like, oh, tell me more. So they were able to bring it back. So some of my students from the Dominican Republic, which is further down than the Aurora Borealis should ever go, a few of them were able to tell me about it. And they knew about it. So it was interesting because we brought culture into it also. So spiritual, hands down. They didn't even realize they were coding for the most part. And afterwards I'm like, we just coded a game. So
that's really cool.
I got their buy-in. So thank you. Can I just do my other one too?
Yeah, I will go with myself, so you don't.
You guys are stuck with me presenting too. I will be trying to be quick.
Can you show the title slide, please? I couldn't read it. Title slide, please.
The final slide? Sure.
Thank you.
I think he said the title slide.
Oh, it's the title slide.
Title, yes.
First slide, yeah, thank you.
So I did it with Montclair and NJIT, and we were part of the RED. I have about 10 other teachers around the conference that we all got to work together, and it was a really awesome experience. The robots. It's you, not the robots.
For everyone presenting, because of time restrictions, if we could please keep it 8 minutes or under, because we have to get through a lot of presentations.
Okay, make this quick. Hi, my name is Hazelman. I teach in Patterson Public Schools at JFK High School. Along with the gamification of solar weather, I got to do another fun one about robotics with Dr. Wang from the computer science department at Montclair. I also worked with one of my colleagues, Lauren Schwerin. Unfortunately, she was not able to come today because she finally succumbed to the virus going around, the flu or whatever it is right now. Okay, so again, I work with mostly seniors in an inner city school trying to teach them robots. And I realized it wasn't the robot's fault, it was mine. When my students couldn't succeed, I didn't have the training on it. So robotics education is becoming more incorporated into K-12 learning, as most of my colleagues have said. Teachers play a key role in this, but face challenges in adopting robotics. When you say, do you want to do robotics? If the teacher is about my age or older, and female, they're going to say, yes, I want Rosie the robot to clean my house. Okay, other than that, robotics is scary. Not to everybody, especially those in this room, but if you're not in this room, robotics is scary. Okay? This study examines how educators and students engaged with the robotics in the classroom. On the bottom is the robot that my student actually built. My motivation was robotics has tremendous potential to improve STEM. but teachers lack training, confidence, and resources. Students may feel intimidated or uninterested. The worst thing you can do to a student is make them unintentionally feel dumb because you've lost them. Pre-survey. It was about 80 students. There was actually 81 records, but one came in afterwards. Okay, do they know about robotics? Only 2 people were highly confident in knowing about robotics. 40 people knew nothing about robotics. That's half. Previous experience, have you ever used a robot? 65% had never used a robot before. Have you ever built a robot? 90% said no. Raspberry Pi. Have you ever programmed the Raspberry Pi? 84% said no. I don't know if the other 16% thought we were talking about making a Raspberry Pi, but I should have been a little bit more specific. Why don't people start? I like to ask those questions that nobody else is going to ask. I ask my students, how many of you are smart enough to build a robot? After my students were done being offended that I asked them if they were smart, 38% said no. 14% said, why are you asking? And 46, which is less than half, said yes. Funny, I have 50% boys, 50% girls. But yeah, only 46 said no, so it's not even a gender thing. Okay? Are you capable? So 46 said they were smart enough, but only 56 said they were capable. What happened to the other 10%?
They went from why you asking.
Yeah. And, 34% said no here. So 4% of the people that weren't smart enough are now capable. So smart enough upsets people. Capable, all of a sudden people want to be on the Home and Garden Center and they can do it themselves. There was 2 of us teaching this, 6th grade through 8th grade and 10th through 12th. We had our student interest, we did small group instruction models, hands-on experience. So before I brought out the big robot, I said, here you go, here's a Sphero and a Dash. They were pre-programmed, they were pre-built. They just had to program and code them. Students loved them. I let them run up and down the hallways with them. It was great. Programming was easy, it was visual. Once it started getting difficult, they were done. The students didn't want to try. Okay? That left me a few of them to go on and to build bigger robots. My goal was to assess engagement, confidence, and strategies to support teachers. This is one of my students on the Raspberry Pi model. What helped this is there was hands-on, there was pre-built, and peer collaboration. Okay? If you're just starting, the pre-done ones like the Ozobot, the Sphero, the Dash are great because they're not intimidating. Nobody has to put anything together. It works right out of the box and it levels them up to get harder. When you're a baby, you don't walk. You're on your stomach. You crawl. Then you toddle. Then you walk. Same theory needs to be applied to robotics. Okay? Pre-assembled robots, they came in one piece. We used blockly coding. Teacher resources were available. Simplified, can use coding. It's fun, interactive. They got to run up and down the hallways. Conclusion. Robotics education fosters confidence and creativity, by far. Once the kids start, they want more. But the teacher training and support is crucial for success. I had no training and Lauren had no training in building a robot. Therefore, we couldn't instill it on the kids. Instead, we had lots of training in the pre-packaged ones, and we were having fun, and the students could code. Robotics engaged